When you're up against a hostile room of people who don't want to be there, you need real strategies that get results. Welcome to From Hostage to Hero, the show that gives you practical advice you can use right now in the courtroom, boardroom, or classroom. Learn how to move your unwilling audience to one that is invested in what you're saying, eager to participate, and engaged in the process. Learn from the attorney whisperer herself, your host, Sari Delamont.
Well, welcome to another episode of From Hostage to Hero. Sari Delamont here with you today. I'm so excited to be here with you. How's your year going so far? I hope it's been amazing. Well, today we're talking about how to design an alliance with jurors and other people as well. And you might say, well, I've been listening to you since the beginning, Sari, and you've already covered this. Yes, I know that, but I didn't call the podcast episode How to Design an Alliance with Jurors, and I can never frickin' find it when I need it. So I thought I'd finally do it, dedicate a whole episode so that we could always find it when I refer people to this material. By the way, this is what people ask me about all the time, this designed alliance, because it's so out there. It's so different than what anyone else is suggesting. So I really wanted to give you a clear idea, both in title, so you could find it again, and what it is I'm talking about when I'm talking about a designed alliance with jurors. Now, if you have the From Hostage to Hero book, there is a version of this in there so that you don't have to write all this down, but it's morphed and changed even since the book came out and how I think about it. And so this is the most up-to-date information on the designed alliance. So let's first talk about what is a designed alliance. Well, it really is this simple. It's something that you and a person or you and a group design together in terms of how you're going to be together in a process. So for example, in coaching, I'm a coach, Coach K here at the business, he's a coach. When we first have our first meeting with a client, or even a sample session with a client, we design together with the client. We say, here's how this goes. What do you need? Right? Here's what I'm going to provide. What are you going to provide? Here's my questions for you. What are your questions for me? How would you like to handle this? For example, if we're starting a new coaching agreement, how do you want to handle confidentiality? For example, I never release the names of my clients unless they give me permission to do so. For example, if we're sitting at the bar and we're having a drink, remember those days? And someone came up, I wouldn't ever say, oh, and they say, how do you know so-and-so? I would never say, oh, I'm his coach or I'm her coach, unless I had permission to do that. So we design all of that in the coaching container. Now, the question is, why? Why is that design so important? Well, that design is so important in the coaching relationship because there needs to be total safety between coach and client as they enter into looking at all of the stuff that the client's going to bring into sessions, stuff they're going to look at and have to process through. And I'm going to be asking questions and we're going to go deep on some things. And if we don't have this container where we both feel like our needs are getting met from both sides, I feel like the client's showing up, the client feels like I'm showing up, we're both giving our best, then we're not going to have a great coaching experience. Now, you can design with anyone at any time. It doesn't have to be a long relationship. As I said, it could be a 30-minute sample session and you design that just in that 30 minutes. But relationships of design are incredibly powerful things because of a couple things I want to talk about now. First is that it makes things safe, right? When we both have say about how a process is going to work, that creates safety. Because I have had my voice heard, you have had your voice heard, we've together designed how we want this to go, which really brings us to the second reason why relationships of design are so powerful, and that's because of accountability. Once you design how you're going to be together, if someone doesn't show up in that way, either coach or client, there's a lot of permission there to speak to that and to say, hey, we designed that this is how it's going to go. Why isn't it going this way? Why are you doing the thing you said you wouldn't do? Or why would this happen? In fact, and many times there's a redesign. So you are working together and you're finding the way you designed originally doesn't work. So you get to redesign. It's very, very powerful. It keeps the empowerment in the relationship. Nobody ever feels like they are one down. I oftentimes have clients come into sessions, and we're not talking about jurors necessarily. They're coming in and they're saying, I don't know how to deal with this situation with my colleague, or I don't know how to deal with this situation with my paralegal. And my question always is, well, what's the agreement? Did you design? And they're always like, no. I mean, this is the paradigm that we've been handed down, right? If you're the boss, then you just say how it goes, and then people are supposed to do it. And that's not really how people act most of the time, right? They have their own reasons, their own needs, their own ways of being. And until you sit down and you design with them and you say, this is what I need as your boss or as your colleague, whatever it might be. And you say, what do you need? And they say, well, I need these things, which is always a very enriching conversation. Then you can design together. Well, I'm willing to give this, or how do you want to be held accountable for that? And now when the paralegal or the colleague or whoever else does not act within the agreement, you have total permission to go back and go, hey, what's up? We designed this. What's happening over there that's not allowing? Do we need to redesign? And it allows you so much permission and so much empowerment on both sides, which really leads us to another reason that relationships of design are so important. And that is they really increase investment. Investment is what we're after in any kind of situation, right? I mean, think about this with employees. We want our employees to be invested. Not just there because they're getting a paycheck, right? We want them to care about the work, care about our mission, care about all the things. And it's really difficult for them to care about all of those things when they haven't been involved in the design. When they haven't been included in the process. They're just told, these are the things you need to care about. So get to it. Let's start caring about it. No, so there's more investment when you bring on a new staff member or you're starting your own firm. Man, what a great time to design with everybody how things are going to go, because then you have a container in place of safety. And when things don't go right, you have accountability. And you also, by the very act of designing, you have investment. Now, how does this work with jurors? Because obviously this is a little bit different than it would be with, say, an employee or a colleague, or even a family member or a friend, which is another place that you can design. Kevin and I design all the time. In fact, it's very common language in our home for him or I to go, can we design something here? Or can we redesign something here? Because this isn't working what we talked about before. It's a great marriage saver. I'll just tell you that right now. Designing is huge in any relationship because, again, it gives power to both parties. And that's really the huge part when it comes to jurors. Remember, when we're thinking about the From Hostage to Hero method, jurors feel they don't have any power. And you know what? They really don't. Not at the beginning. This is why telling them how powerful they are and, oh, you're so powerful and we couldn't do this without you and all that stuff, they just look at that and they're like, this is bullshit. Because they don't feel powerful. Again, they're forced to be there. They told where to go. They have to ask permission to go to the bathroom in many cases. They don't know when they can leave. They feel very powerless. So a design is needed. And that's one of the things I noticed right away when I started working in the legal field, especially after I got my coaches training. I'm like, oh my God, one of the reasons why this feels so awful for jurors is they have no say. If we look at the SCARF model, which you've heard me talk about hundreds of times, remember that's from David Rock, Your Brain at Work. He has this model that says these 5 factors, the brain either views as a reward or an attack based on how we work with them. So status, right? If we increase someone's status, brain thinks that's great. If we decrease their status, threaten the status, brain's like attack, right? Certainty, if we give a lot of certainty, that's good. Not so much certainty, brain views that as an attack. Autonomy, right? How free do we feel that we can move in our lives? Brain thinks that's great if we have a lot of it. If it's limited, as it is with jurors, not so great. Relatedness, the more we know people, better. If we don't know people, not so great. The brain also views that as attack. And again, fairness. We need to feel like the process we're involved in is fair. Think about how jurors think about the trial process. Brain attack. So the designing with jurors really gives them some power back, especially in the place of certainty. Well, really, it's all of them, because it gives us certainty, it gives them autonomy, some of that back, and it gives them an increased status, right? Because now we're saying, I want to know what you think. I want to bring you in on this process. And so this is why we do the design. Now let's talk about, before we talk about what the design is and the different ways you can do it, what you're doing now and why it doesn't work. Because it's not great. Here's what I'm seeing a lot of different things. One of the things I see a lot of is, well, let me tell you about this process, and you're so important, and this is your constitutional right, and this may not be the right case for you, and a case down the hallway might be a better case for you, and jurors are thinking, blah, 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 blah. First of all, it's a lot of fucking talking, and not by jurors. It's just more talking by you. Then I see things like, we're here to determine whether, you're biased or not, which immediately just feels awful for jurors. They're like, oh, really? So you're saying that I can't even figure out how to be fair here? We do all well, but it's just because, you've had things happen in your life, and it would be totally understandable. Jurors aren't buying it. They're like, so let me just get this straight. You don't think I can be fair, right? That's how jurors think about that when we do all of these things. Or this is your important duty and you're so important, all that stuff. Jurors none of those things are a designed alliance. Why? Because you're not involving the jurors. It's all you putting stuff on them, hoping it makes them feel better about what's about to happen. It doesn't. It never does. You know this. It never does. It doesn't work. So how do you actually design with jurors? That's the question. Well, I'm going to share with you how I have designed a design, but really you can design any way that makes sense to you as long as it is an equal process, or as equal as we can get it. Okay, I was just in the voir dire circle in the H2H crew. That's one of our monthly events. We're actually going to be adding more very soon, where you get to come in and practice voir dire. And we've got 4 attorneys in the hot seats, and the other attorneys are playing jurors. And I tell you, so many of the attorneys playing jurors, I learned so much just playing juror, not just playing attorney. But we were in there and we were having that process, and we were talking about the design, and it was so interesting to see how many people had never even thought about designing with jurors and giving them that opportunity. And we were talking about why that's difficult is because it is such a formal process, right? Trial is a formal process. We're in a formal situation. We're in a courtroom. Everyone's in suits, and right? Part of this work, if you buy into the From Hostage to Hero method, is that you have to go against the system. I gave the example in the voir dire circle. It's kind of like when the police are called to a domestic dispute, and one police officer is dealing with what's ever happened, and the other police officer's got the kid over in the corner and with the teddy bear and is like, how are you doing? What's going on? That's your job for jurors. They're the kid that's stuck in between. They're like, I don't know, these two people are fighting, and I don't know what the hell this is about. Right? Your job is to come and go, here's a teddy bear, right? You're going to be fine. We're all going to be fine, and kind of shut the system out. But that's difficult because you have to go against the system. That's why it feels odd. That doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. Absolutely should be done. All right. So knowing that, this is how I like to design with jurors. So this is one example, not the example. I like to start by saying what I think they're thinking. Now, this is what we call confirming a juror's sanity, and it makes you look smart because it makes you appear as though you get what they're going through. I don't think any attorney I've ever seen did this before I mentioned it. Now, tons of attorneys are doing it and loving it. And here's what it is. It's saying something like this. Good morning. I bet many of you are thinking that this process is one where we get to ask questions and you have to answer, and based on your answers we get to decide who's good for our case or who's bad for our case, and then we make decisions based on that information, and we either throw you off or keep you on whether you want to be here or not. Who here thinks that's probably what we're here to do, right? And you get some laughs from the jury and they're like, yeah, I think that's kind of how it is, right? So that first step in my design, again, it's just my design, it doesn't necessarily need to be yours, is to confirm sanity, okay? So then after I do that, of course, I've never done this because I'm not a licensed attorney, but when I've seen the attorneys do it and when I teach doing it, the second step is to say, I don't like doing it that way. I don't think that's fair. I think you should have more say in this process. And so what I would like to do is to have a conversation where we talk about some of the principles or the issues that you're going to have to wrestle with in this case. And then after we have that conversation, I'm going to ask who here, after knowing a little bit more about the case, would like to be a juror on the case. Because I really prefer that we only have jurors here that want to be here. Who here is willing to have that conversation and then let me know afterwards whether you'd like to be here or not? Now, what you've done there is quite important, is that what you said is non-verbally or otherwise, look, you have this conversation with me. You're going to learn a little bit about the case, but you also have an opportunity to tell me if you want to be here or not. Now, there's no juror in the world that's going to give up that opportunity. You mean I can tell you I don't want to be here and you're going to let me go? Now, we'll get to that let me go part in just a minute because you're like, but I don't know if I have the power, sorry. Well, wait for it. All right, so they all raise their hand, or most of them raise their hand. Don't worry about the ones who don't. That's fine, okay? And so then you say, all right, couple of caveats. First caveat is, as we talk about the issues or the principles in the case, we can't talk details. I can't give you evidence. I'm really going to stay away from names, those types of things, because that's not the part of the trial that we're in. So we really can talk very generally, and that might be really frustrating. In fact, it is frustrating for a lot of jurors, knowing that we can't talk about a lot of details, but that we'll be talking about what issues are involved in the case. Are you still willing to talk to me? Okay, so this kind of gets around that whole, well, I'm going to get to know all about the case, right? No, you're not. So then you get jurors to raise their hand. And those of you who are trained in sales techniques will also recognize how many times I'm having the jurors raise their hand, right? So I'm doing that on purpose. I'm getting them to say yes to me, right? By giving them what they want. I'm also involving them in the process. I say, okay, one other caveat. And that is, at the end of this process, when I ask who here would like to be a juror in this case, if there are some of you that say yes, and there are some of you that say no, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that happens. Those of you who want to be here, get to be here. And those of you who don't. But do know, I do not have complete control. There is another side represented here. And they also get to make some choices. And that means that some of you who maybe didn't want to be here may still have to be here. And those of you who may wanted to stay may get dismissed. Now, knowing I don't have complete control and can't guarantee that you either get a seat or don't get a seat, are you still willing to talk to me? Now, notice how much credibility you get with that. You really are saying, I'm going to do my best to keep my promise. And by the way, you need to keep your promise. I don't care how good that juror is for you. If they said they don't want to be there, you don't want them there. Let them go, if at all possible. But also notice what I've done. Those of you who are listening and not watching the video, what I did when I said there's another side represented here is I turned and I looked. Now what I've done is I've said, look, if you don't get to be here or you don't get to leave, it's their fault, not mine. Just by looking and gesturing over to the other side, I assign that responsibility to them. And that's huge. Now, I've found the Designed Alliance works beautifully. Jurors love being a part of the process and saying, okay, I'll have a conversation with you. Yeah, it's okay that we can't talk details. Yeah, I'll let you know if I want to be here or not. Yeah, it's okay if you can't guarantee it. And there again may be some that you cannot guarantee. You may need to use a peremptory challenge on them. They're not going to talk to you. They don't want to be part of this, whatever. You don't want them anyway. You may have to ask them some questions to try to get a cause challenge out of them. And you can say, look, you said you didn't want to talk to me. I do have to ask you a couple of questions. And this may be exactly what you're looking for. You willing just to answer a couple questions and I'll leave you alone? Something like that you might have to do. But in general, what I've found in all of the juries I've observed, I haven't had anyone who's said, no, I'm not willing to talk. No, ever. Not once. I've never had that happen. The point is, whatever design you use, it has to be you, it has to be your words. I mean, steal away, you're free to use this. The point is just to design. You have to bring jurors in on the process. It could be anything as simple as, I'm about to ask you a bunch of questions, but that doesn't seem fair. Do you have any questions for me? Either before or after, right? Let them ask you questions and say, I'll answer if I can. There's some things I can't answer. But anything that questions you have about the process or of me before we get going, that's a design, right? When Nick Rowley stands in front of the jury and says, will you talk to me? Will you be brutally honest? He's designing with the jurors. He may not call it that, but that's what he's doing. The point is to bring jurors in so they're not so fucking pissed at you that they're being forced to do something they don't want to do, and to give them their autonomy and to empower them. We say how powerful they are. Actually give them the power. I'm interested in hearing your ideas on designing. That's my idea on designing. And now we can actually find this podcast episode because it'll be titled correctly. Hope that was helpful. See you in the next one. Thanks for joining me today. If you benefited from what we talked about or just want to let me know you enjoy the podcast, go ahead and leave me a review on whichever platform you use to listen to From Hostage to Hero. Add a comment and I just might give you a shout out on an upcoming episode. In the meantime, head over to FromHostageToHero.com to order your copy of my book, From Hostage to Hero, Captivate the Jury by Setting Them Free, and to get on my mailing list. I send out trial tips and encouragement right to your inbox every single week. And while you're there, make sure you join the waitlist to become an H2H crew member when we reopen. We only open a few times each year and you do not want to miss out. I look forward to our time together in next week's episode. Talk then.